Okay, if you've ever bought or sold a house, you know there's that one moment that makes everyone just hold their breath. I'm talking about the real estate appraisal. It's when an expert comes in and tells you what your dream home is actually worth, at least in the eyes of the bank. And let me tell you, sometimes their opinion is not what you were hoping to hear. So picture this. You found the perfect place, you negotiated like a pro, and you and the seller finally shake hands on a price, $180,000. Everything's going great. And then the appraisal report lands, and it values the property at only $150,000. Whoa, that's a $30,000 gap that just threw a giant wrench into your plans. So what gives? What happens now? Who's right? Who's wrong? Does the entire deal just fall apart? This is a super common fear for both buyers and sellers. And today, we're going to pull back the curtain and break down exactly what's going on. To figure out what happens next, first, we've got to understand why the appraisal is even happening. And here's the key thing to remember. The appraisal, it's not really for you, the buyer, and it's not for the seller either. It's for the lender, the bank. Think about it from their perspective. The bank is about to loan out a massive amount of money. They need to be absolutely sure that the house they're lending on is good collateral for that loan. It's basically their insurance policy. If, worst case scenario, you stop making payments and they have to foreclose, they need to know they can sell that house and get their money back. The magic number they're hunting for is something called market value. Now, this isn't just some number they pull out of a hat, and it has absolutely nothing to do with how much you love the kitchen backsplash. It's a professional opinion, and it's based on cold, hard data, what similar homes in that exact area have actually sold for recently. That's the number that protects their investment. So let's see how this actually plays out in our scenario. The lender takes that appraised value, the 150, and that becomes the new starting line for all their calculations. They completely ignore the higher sales price you and the seller agreed on. From that $150,000, they're going to apply what's called their loan-to-value ratio, or LTV. It's pretty standard for most lenders to finance about 80% of a property's appraised value. Which brings us to $120,000. And that, right there, is the problem. This is the absolute max the bank will lend for this house, and it's way less than the buyer needs to hit that $180,000 purchase price. That gap has to be filled somehow, or the deal's in trouble. So you're probably wondering, how in the world do appraisers even come up with this all-important number? Well, they have a toolkit with 3 main ways they figure out a property's value. These are the 3 paths they can take: the market approach, the cost approach, and the income approach. Now, for the kind of homes most of us are buying, single-family homes, the market approach is by far the king. It's the most common and the most important one. The cost approach is built on a really simple idea. A buyer is not going to pay more for an older home than it would cost to just build a similar one from scratch. So the appraiser figures out the cost to build it new, subtracts for all the wear and tear, that's the depreciation, and then adds back in the value of the land itself. And the income approach? Well, just like the name says, it's all about properties that make money, like apartment buildings or commercial spaces. It looks at how much rent a property brings in to figure out its value. For most of us buying a home to live in, this one just doesn't really apply. Which brings us back to the star of the show, the market approach. This whole method is about finding what are called comps, short for comparable sales, to figure out what a house is worth. But, not just any old sale will do. Appraisers are kind of like detectives. They're looking for very specific clues. A good comp has to be recent. We're talking a sale in the last 6 months, ideally. It absolutely needs to be in the same neighborhood or at least a very, very similar one. And of course, it has to look and feel the same, similar bedrooms, bathrooms, and square footage. But there's one more rule that's super important. It has to be what's called an arm's length transaction. I know it sounds a little formal, but all it means is that the sale was fair and normal. A dad selling to his daughter for a huge discount? Nope, that's not a comp. A seller who was under crazy pressure and had to sell in a week? Also not a comp. It has to be a sale that reflects the true open market. Okay, so let's circle all the way back to our original problem. You get it now, you see how the appraiser got their number, but it's still way lower than the price you agreed to. What can you do? Are you just stuck? The very first thing you have to remember is this. An appraisal, even with all its data and rules, is ultimately an opinion of value. Every single report has some subjective calls in it. Appraisers are human beings, and you know what? It's possible they missed something or even made a mistake. And that means you're not powerless here. you can actually appeal the appraisal. If you have real evidence, like maybe you found better comps that the appraisal missed, or you have receipts for major upgrades they didn't really account for, you can take that to your lender and ask them to take a second look. So, knowing that you might have to deal with this one day, it really helps to get inside an appraiser's head. What exactly are they looking for when they walk through a property? What's on their checklist? Well, they're looking at a whole bunch of stuff. You've got the big ones, of course: location, 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 the age and overall condition of the home. But they also go deeper. They're looking at things like the quality of the construction, the curb appeal, even something called functional utility, which is just a fancy way of saying, does the layout of the house actually make sense? And yeah, they definitely notice valuable upgrades like energy-efficient windows or solar panels. It really makes you think, doesn't it? A home's value isn't just about what you paid for it or all the memories you've made there. It's about a systematic, data-driven analysis from the perspective of a lender who's just trying to protect their investment. So now that you know what's on their radar, how does that change the way you see the value of your own home?